Hello again, and happy Sunday, local time for Metro Manila, the Philippines, Southeastern Asia. A federal judge in Pennsylvania has thrown out the Trump campaign's latest desperate attempt to try to block the certification of the results in that state, which President elect Joe Biden won. And in his or her ruling, the judge schooled the outgoing president on the rules of free and fair elections. So let's read this interesting news item. So, Federal Appeals Court panel rejects Trump request to block certification of Pennsylvania's election results. Uh, Written by John Swain, Michelle Yi-Hee Lee, and Robert Barnes, published on November the 28th, 2020, on the Washington Post's website. A federal appeals court on Friday rejected President Trump's request for an emergency injunction to overturn the certification of Pennsylvania's election results, delivering another defeat to the president's attempts to reverse the outcome in a state that has already formalized President-elect Joe Biden's victory there. Trump's campaign had filed with the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Third Circuit after a U.S. District Court last weekend dismissed its federal lawsuit against Pennsylvania election authorities and rejected the campaign's request to be allowed to revise the suit to include more allegations. The lawsuit sought to halt certification of Pennsylvania's results on the grounds that Republicans were legally disadvantaged because some Democratic-leaning areas allowed voters to correct administrative errors on their mail ballots. So once again, nitpicking, hair splitting. There simply is no case of a massive vote fraud or anything of the kind that would help Donald Trump to win that state. In a scathing 21-page opinion, the Third Circuit said that the Trump campaign's challenge of the district court's decision had no merit. The opinion was written by Judge Stephanos Bibas, who was appointed to the court, guess by whom? President Trump himself. Bibas was joined by two other Republican-appointed judges, so Trump can only rail against the never Trump Republicans, but he himself had appointed one of them. So he can't accuse the judges of being Democrats because they aren't, or probably are not. In a unanimous vote by the three-member panel, and listen very carefully, I'm quoting now Judge Bibas, charges of unfairness are serious, but calling an election unfair does not make it so. Charges require specific allegations and then proof. We have neither here. And that is what can be said of Donald Trump's attempts to try to overturn the democratic, small d democratic, free and fair results of those elections. So the allegations are often contradictory, like there have been contradictory demands, count every last vote, but on the other hand, at least in one or two states, Trump's campaign team has tried to halt the counting of votes. And in his bizarre news conference, I think this wait a minute, Thursday, US time, his first press conference in 3 weeks, by the way, between so and so many Twitter messages, President Trump claimed that in every state there were several hundreds of thousands of invalid votes. That in the entire United States there supposedly were tens of millions of invalid votes. Well, he probably was referring to the many mail-in votes that were cast for his opponent and winner, Joe Biden. So supposedly made them invalid because they were not cast for him. As I said, this Saturday morning, local time, to a student whom I'm teaching online and will be teaching until the first week of February 2021 in the US College Board's course Advanced Placement, Comparative Government and Politics. Trump would probably prefer to govern an authoritarian dictatorship where the mass media is easy to control and where it's easy to manipulate the election results. Anyway, this was what I meant. I didn't use these exact words, of course. And then Judge Bibas wrote further, voters, not lawyers, choose the president. Ballots, not briefs, decide elections. So this is what is ultimately at stake, the defense of the free and fair elections. Trump's campaign has not been able to prove a single case of massive vote fraud. When there was that laborious human strength and time and even money-consuming manual recount in Georgia, all that Trump was able to manage was a 2,000 vote reduction in Biden's admittedly slim victory margin of 12,000. So down from 14,000 to 12,000 votes. And that has been basically all that he has managed. And since the deadline for the certification of results nears, it is December the 8th, each defeat now in the courts means yet one more nail in the coffin of Donald Trump's single-term US presidency. And ultimately, if he humbles himself, he will admit the fact that he himself did himself in, first and foremost, because of his notably arrogant, bullish, and confrontational, and so openly self-loving and self-centered and contemptuous personality. So ultimately, he had and has himself to blame for losing the job that he coveted for years, possibly even decades. Jenna Ellis, a legal advisor to Trump's campaign, said after the decision that the case would be taken to the US Supreme Court. However, Trump himself had no immediate response. His personal lawyer and former Republican mayor of New York City, Rudolph Giuliani, later suggested it was not clear whether the appeals court's action would be challenged in the Supreme Court. Most likely it won't be. Legal experts have said the case has little chance of success at the Supreme Court, much like the numerous other Republican election lawsuits pending in battleground states. Over 24 cases have been filed across 6 such states since Election Day to undo the results, but nearly every judgment rendered has gone against the president's team. So wouldn't it be sensible for Donald Trump to just give up? Yes, it would, but he's too proud to do so yet.